Good morning, children. Today we are going to continue chapter 2, poem A Little Grain of Gold. As I told you in the previous session, the poem has been written by the famous Indian English poet Rabindranath Tagore. The poem is in first person and it is a narrative by a beggar. A beggar who was on his usual rounds collecting alms from door to door in a village path when suddenly a golden chariot, almost like a gorgeous dream, appears in front of him suddenly, raising his hopes that probably the wealthy man who is riding the chariot, would give him a lot of wealth and his evil days will come to an end. This we have discussed in the previous session. Let's continue the poem further. The second stanza talks about the chariot when it suddenly stops near the beggar. The chariot stopped where I stood. Thy glance fell on me, and thou camest down with a smile. I felt that the luck of my life had come at last. Then of a sudden thou didst hold out thy right hand and say, "What hast thou to give to me?" Now the tables, seem to turn here in this stanza. Why? The King of Kings got down from the chariot. He paid a quick glance. Glance means a quick look. He had a quick look on the beggar. He came down from the chariot with a smile, making the beggar more hopeful. And he thought probably it was the luckiest day of his life. But then all of a sudden, something surprising happened, something contrasting to the beggar's hopes. What did the King of Kings do? He held out his right hand in front of the beggar, asking alms. He said, "What hast thou to give to me? What you can give to me?" This was quite rather, shocking, not surprising. I would say it was rather shocking for the beggar. All his hopes, seemed to be fading away. And he thought, "Ah, what a kingly jest! Was it to open thy palm to a beggar to beg?" I was confused and stood undecided. And then from my wallet, I slowly took out the least grain of corn and gave it to thee. So initially, the beggar thought it was a kingly jest. Jest means a joke. So he thought probably the king was joking. It was a big joke, since it has never been heard or seen that a king was begging alms from a beggar. So this made the beggar quite confused. He was baffled and he stood undecided, means he could not think of what course of action he should take further. For a moment he stood dumb. Then slowly and gradually he realized that this was actually happening, and then he thought, he put his hand in his bag, the pouch or the wallet he was carrying, in which he was keeping all the things and money. And from that wallet, he slowly took out the least little grain of corn and he gave it to the king. So the word slowly here, is indicating two things. Slowly is showing the beggar's unwillingness. He's not ready, first of all, to give anything to the king because he thinks he's too poor to do that. And secondly, it shows his miserliness, his unwillingness to spend anything or to give anything to the king. But then he had to give, and then the king left. So nothing, the dreams that he has seen were all shattered. But how great my surprise when at the day's end I emptied my bag on the floor to find the least little grain of gold among the poor heap. I bitterly wept and wished that I had the heart to give thee my all. This last stanza shows the sadness, the sorrowfulness, the regret and remorse that the beggar feels. Now, what happens when he goes back home and when he empties his bag on the floor to see the collection that he has done throughout the day? Among the poor heap, among the pile of things that he has kept that came out from the bag, what he found, to his surprise, a little grain of gold, exactly the same size of the grain of corn that he has given to the king. At this moment, he was full of, regret. He rather bitterly wept. Bitterly means, he greatly wept. He wept like a child, he was crying like a child. The feelings of sadness and anger on himself, it came out as tears from through his eyes. And he wished that he could go back and change. And he wished he had the heart to give thee my all, means to give you all that I had. Lately, he's too late to realize that the King of Kings was no one else but God Himself, who had come there to change his life. But he was being tested that how generous and kind he could be. So, his selfishness, his greediness, his miserliness has brought this, we would say, has proved him unlucky since his dreams were not fulfilled. So, what lesson he learns at the end? And it is also a spiritual rising for him. He learns the first lesson that the beggar learns is that we should learn to give unconditionally. As we have discussed in the beginning, this poem is, it signifies the attitude of giving without expecting anything in return. So this is the first lesson that he learns. And if we go at a higher level, what spiritual lesson any man would learn from this poem is that we should surrender to God not only the materialistic things, the general things we have in life, but we should, surrender all our wants and desires also, and synchronize our thoughts with the feelings of God in order to rise in. So what is the message of the poem? The message of the poem, if I would sum up in the words of Anne Frank, is no one has ever become poor by giving. If you have this attitude of giving, you will never be poor in life. God is there, He's watching your actions, and is there to keep you, bestow a prosperous life for. Okay. I hope the message of the poem is very clear to all of you. After this, let us quickly discuss a few questions based on the poem. First question is, where did the chariot stop? And who came down from the chariot with a smile? As I've told you, in the second stanza, we have learned the chariot stopped where the beggar was standing, and the king of all kings came down from the chariot with a. Second is, who is referred to as the king of all kings and why? Well, king of all kings, we have come to know God is referred to as the king of all kings because he is the only one who can convert the poor into rich and the rich into poor. Third is, why do you think the beggar becomes hopeful on seeing the golden chariot? Well, the beggar becomes hopeful because he thought that the king of all kings will give him alms and his evil days will be over. So with these thoughts, he was quite hopeful, he was quite optimistic. The fourth question is a reference to context. Ah, what a kingly jest was it to open thy palm to a beggar to beg. I was confused and stood. The first question is, what do you understand by the phrase kingly jest? Well, the word jest means a joke. Kingly means big size, of course, king size. So this phrase means that the king's act of opening his arm in front of the beggar to beg is a big joke. It was a big joke. It was unacceptable. Next, why was the beggar confused? The beggar was confused because he was expecting alms from the King of Kings. But on the contrary, now the king himself was asking him for alms. What did the king ask for? The king asked the beggar to give him something, or we can say he asked him to give him. Fifth question is, what made the beggar feel surprised and sorrowful on discovering the grain of gold? Well, when he found the grain of gold in his poor heap, he was surprised as well as sorrowful because he realized, if he had given all his grain to God at that time, then all his grain would have turned into gold. But since he has given only a little grain to the king, he got in return only a single grain of gold. At the end, I would like to give one question as homework to you. Rest of the questions you will find in the notes. The question is, how can you express your love and concern towards the street children who are often seen begging on the streets? Please think and write suitable answers according to your